So I've been finding a lot of value in reading books one-on-one with older kids. And I always thought once my kids hit a certain age, read alouds might feel a little awkward, but I have found so much goodness, a different kind of goodness in focusing in on my middle schooler and high schooler. And I'm just going to share some of the books that we've been reading together lately. Thanks for joining us at Juicebox Homeschools. I have been reading aloud to my kids for many years. I've been homeschooling for the last 10 years. My kids are now 9, 12, and 15. I have a new 15-year-old, and that just sounds really old compared to, I don't know why, 14 to 15 sounds so different to me. So different. Like a big jump in age and expectations, and it's not. It's just 1 year higher, but I don't know. I feel like I have to brace myself now every year. Just new things all the time, new opportunities to learn every day. So reading aloud has always been a special part of our homeschool. We read aloud still as a family. We read aloud in our morning time. We start our day off with some Bible study, but also books of all different genres, historical time periods, and topics. And I share a lot of that on our Instagram channel at Juicebox Homeschool. But something I've been sharing more about lately is the value I find in reading one-on-one with my older kids. So with my daughter, she's 15, I've been reading books with her since middle school, just one-on-one, finding topics that either she's struggling in or either topics that I want to cover with her before she graduates. And we've just been continuing it on through these years. And now that she's a freshman in high school, I've been sharing more on this topic because I've been able to see over the last 3 years the impact that it's made on our lives, our relationship, just the great opportunity that is there for us in this season. Middle school and high school are a time when kids naturally will establish more independence. They're a lot more independent in their learning and in their life in general, and this time is more meaningful. Anytime that I can have with them one-on-one in an intimate setting and have intimate discussion is so much more valuable now and is so much more important. It feels crucial to have these conversations at this stage. So let me just go over some of the books that we've been reading together. I will link them below in case you're interested in taking a look at them. First, I'm going to go through the books that my husband has been reading with my son. So that's kind of how we're doing it. So I will meet with my daughter, my husband will meet with my son. So time-wise, I will aim to read 2 to 3 times with my daughter per week. My husband reads once a week with my son. So they've gone through a lot less books. So the time is not just for reading, it's reading together, discussing the reading, but also touch points of connection for things that have happened throughout the week that we might need to discuss, decisions that might need to be made for an upcoming event or an RSVP that we need to decide if we're going to go or not. New boundaries that we might need to put into place for whatever new thing is on the horizon. Habits, good or bad, that we need to discuss, relationships, friendships, all kinds of things are on the table. And so much of our homeschool life is together, or at least together physically. We're in the same area, and some conversations are just more productive, more effective when we're alone in a private setting. So it's been really helpful because what I've found is that in this season, I can't stay ahead of things. I used to, especially when they were younger, always try to be proactive and not reactive, right? Like, you have a general sense of what's coming up ahead. In these older years, I'm finding it's really hard for me to stay ahead of things where there are some situations or circumstances I wouldn't be able to dream up, if you know what I mean. It definitely feels like I'm in a more reactive season, and I don't want to react out of emotion or out of, impulse. And so these meetings kind of help me not stay ahead, but kind of just stay up to date of where we're going, what's happening in their minds, their hearts, what's influencing them are not predictable to me anymore. And that can be stress inducing for sure, but these meetings definitely help to reduce that stress, to stay in the know of what's going on, to kind of walk with them and stay on pace with where they're going. So that's about as much as I can share on that part, but I can share the books. These are the books that my son and my husband have been reading. So my son is 12, he's in the 6th grade now, and they just started reading one-on-one this year, so they only have 2 books under their belt right now. One is Created for Work. This is a book that we actually read, myself and my kids, when they were a little bit younger, but I think it's a lot more effective now in middle school, and he can relate to a lot of these things. My husband and him have taken some of these lessons and applied them already. I can hear my husband reference some of these lessons in their conversations, and I can see how this has been so helpful in my son's healthy attitude towards work and what the Lord has to say about work, especially for a young man. And the author Bob Schultz, I really respect his work, his writing, and there are a couple of other books that I want my husband to read with my son from this author. The next book that they read together is Lies Boys Believe, and there's a student book that they read here and a parent guide. So the student book is a little bit thicker, if you could see the difference. I want to say it's kind of graphic novel, but I know true graphic novel fans will be like, no, that's not a graphic novel. But there are just a lot of pictures and the type is very easy to read. My son enjoys reading it, no complaints at all. It's very easy reading for him and relatable stories for his age. They talk about 10 different lies that are common for boys to believe. Reading the Bible just isn't for me. I'm good enough. No one needs to know about my sin. God is always mad at me. Girls rule, boys drool. I don't need friends. Following Jesus is boring. I can't control myself. I'm too young to blank. And I don't need to tell anyone that I follow Jesus. Each chapter covers one of those lies, and the parent guide is helpful. It goes through the lies as well, but it also helps combat the lies with biblical truth. This set has been very impactful to my husband and my son. There's also a girls version and a men and women's version, I believe, that I'm looking into as well. Now onto my daughter's books. We read a few more books because we read a little more often, 2 to 3 times a week. So I have 5 total here that we've read for her freshman year so far. The first one is Raising a Screen Smart Kid. I have talked about this before. This has been really helpful now that she's on her computer quite a bit for online classes. She uses the iPad, she has a phone. There's a lot of really good tips in here for both of us. As far as taking a step back from your screen and thinking things through and using wisdom and discernment before being all consumed by our screens. And the book is not anti-screens at all, which some can be a little more extreme on the anti-screen side, which we just want to be realistic and prepare them for adulthood. But I really appreciate that this book has practical guidance for how to navigate using screens with wisdom and having a healthy relationship with your phone and just questioning yourself, reassessing where you're at in each season. And reading this book together, I think, was really helpful because we were able to ask each other questions on the spot. And it's a really good read if you want to just read this book on your own as a mom first. But some really good conversations have happened between us through reading it together. Okay, the next book we read is called Emboldened, A Vision for Empowering Women in Ministry. And I saw a recommendation on this book here on YouTube that another mom read it with her teen. We did not get through this book. It was not a read for us overall. Well, I like the concept of serving with boldness, being involved in ministry as a woman. There were some things in here that were hard to relate to and were different in how we see serving in ministry. I could tell this book was a chore for my daughter to listen to, and it was really hard for me to continue reading too, so we stopped maybe about a quarter through. The next book we read was a hit, Eat That Frog. It's all about productivity. I'll show you one so you can see the length. Chapter 4, Consider the Consequences. Another page. Can see it here. Each chapter ends with a box at the end that has the main points, kind of like a summary of what that chapter was about. This was really helpful in a season where she's really learning how to manage her time and finding the consequences of not managing your time well. And one of the main points of Eat That Frog talks about tackling your most challenging, your most pressing, your most stressful task first. And seeing her apply this in her schoolwork has been really rewarding. And she'll come back and tell me some of her wins based on following some of the guidance in this book. This next book, Life Skills for Teen, is one she actually read on her own last year. She suggested we read it again together. She really enjoyed it and wanted to just refresh herself on some of the life skills that they talk about in this book. There are 13 topics covered: food and kitchen, personal grooming, personal health, money and budgeting. That's a good one. Making goals and keeping them, coping with emotions, problem solving and decision making, behavioral skills, social skills, clothing, home maintenance, car care, maps and direction. Highly recommend this one. She really enjoyed the read and learned a lot of things that she didn't know about before. This one I picked up at Generations. I love their bookstore. I will link it below. Everything I've read from Generations has been a hit, and this one is no exception. It's the Set Apart Girl's Guide to Feminine Grace. And I love that this book reviews social grace, just how to carry yourself as a woman of God, and I'm sure for a teenage girl in this season. And this book was just refreshing. To me, it wasn't so out of date. I've read some books on femininity movie before that just felt like a little bit much for us. This one feels current and modern and something that is very relatable and realistic. It gives specific examples, music, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, how hospitable you are, and it all points to considering others, which is really opposite of how our world trains teenagers to think. It's very selfie focused. It's very me, me, me. How does this affect me and my future? This really helps keep the focus on others. So how you dress, how you carry yourself, how you speak, see your belongings in your space, all with a consideration of others and being more outwardly focused. So this was very good for us. I'm going to link all of this below. Overall, I just highly encourage, if you have a middle schooler or a teenager, don't stop reading aloud. If you have the capacity to read with your tweens and your teenagers, it's one of those things that, you want to get the most bang for your buck. You want to use your time effectively and make an impact. And this is one of those things that I've seen as an incredible use of my time. There are some things in our homeschool that we just have to do. We have to get through some things, right? But this has been one of the habits that I've seen the most return on. So if you have any great book suggestions for reading with teenagers, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.